I'm glad to welcome back BJ Bass of RBA Sports. BJ, how you doing?
I'm great, Anthony. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, you're always welcome. Um, the Mac. We got to start with the Mac. How's that looking so far?
Well, we talked about the two teams I thought would be competing for the MAC championship, Iona and Manhattan.
Yep.
And so far, Manhattan has had a couple of tough losses.
Okay.
Um, they had a great game as part of the NCAA tip-off, the full 24 hours of college basketball. They played up at UMass, and
Okay.
they played a really tight game, and they lost in overtime, but they were able to tie it in regulation with a second left. Coach Mazziello he drew up a great play they got a lob to the kid, Rich Williams, who's a sophomore now.
Yep.
And he's one of the kids I mentioned to you last week that really, needs to step up for them. And so they executed a great play, and they got it dunked with 1 second left. It was really amazing.
Yeah.
And they got it into overtime. Unfortunately, they lost in overtime. But that's a tough game for them going up against an A10 team on the road.
Yeah.
And then they lost another heartbreaker. I don't know if you saw this, but it was absolutely amazing. And I think this is probably one Mazziello would like to have back.
Yeah.
But they lost on a 75-foot three at the
Oh man.
buzzer at George Mason. They were on the line up two with 1 second to go,
Yeah.
and Mazziello had the player miss the free throw on purpose.
Yeah.
And because I guess he figured it would be, chaos and they wouldn't be able to get a shot off. But the George Mason kid got the rebound literally from three-quarter court, threw it in, and Manhattan lost at the buzzer by one. And
Oh
so,
man.
yeah, I mean, so they're playing well, they're playing tough, but those are certainly two tough out-of-conference games to start the season.
Yeah.
I think they'll be fine in the MAC. I think they'll be right where they're supposed to be at the end of the season. And I think it'll come down to Manhattan and Iona at the end. Iona's played some good games. They lost a tough game in the SEC I saw the other day. But the players that need to be playing well and that's A.J. English, the point guard,
Yep. You
who's
mentioned him
getting a lot
before.
of NBA looks. And they have a big, David Lowry, who plays in the post. And so, they'll be fine in the MAC, and I think that's ultimately where we're going.
Yeah. So you think that once all the non-division games are over, everything will fall into place, and the rivalries will just pan out to how it was last season.
There's always one or two surprises. I mean, I saw Siena lost a tough game at Fordham. I know they lost one of their top players to injury.
Yeah.
Canisius will take a step back without Billy Barron for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, Fairfield and Ryder, will probably improve. A team to keep an eye on, though, that was really good last year, that was a surprise, was Quinnipiac.
Okay. Yes.
And this was their first year in the MAC last year, so nobody could really predict how they would do.
Right.
But they finished in the top four, and they're a really tough team. They have a really good coach, Tom Moore, who's a Jim Calhoun guy from UConn.
Yeah.
So Quinnipiac might be a team to keep an eye on.
Okay. All right. And what about across the country? Is there anyone standing out yet?
I really like Wisconsin, and I have to qualify that and say that I'm a former or a Badger alum,
Uh-huh.
and so maybe I should be recusing myself, but I won't.
Right.
They went to the Final Four last year.
Yeah.
I think they have one of the best coaches in the country. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
They have veteran leadership at the point guard with Trayvon Jackson.
Okay.
They have a veteran in the post in Frank Kaminsky. They have probably a couple guys, Sam Decker and Kaminsky, that are on the NBA radar, and we'll see how that plays out. But they have some NBA talent. They have coaching. They have veteran leadership. They execute. They understand how to win.
Yeah.
I know they play Duke tonight, so that'll be an interesting matchup to see. How I like Wisconsin in this game.
Yeah.
But Duke certainly has top of the lottery NBA talent as well.
Okay.
But they're younger.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're freshmen, so you don't know how they're going to react in playing some veteran guys that know how to play. But that's a team that I really, really like to get back to the Final Four. Once you get there, it could be, there's some luck involved, as we've seen.
Yeah.
But I think the experience of, losing to Kentucky last year, I think they're hungry. They have the motivation. There are some other teams playing very well across the country.
Yeah.
But Wisconsin is a team that I really am going to keep an eye on moving forward.
Okay. Is there anyone else who's emerged as a team that maybe a surprise, or they've maintained the good form that they finished the season last year?
Well, I did. I didn't. I know Illinois and Miami are both undefeated. I think, and forgive me, I don't know if they played last night as part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge or if they play tonight. I have to check that. but those are certainly two teams that that are playing very well. Another team that we might want to keep an eye on, and it's certainly a team that's been around and been on the radar, is Villanova.
Right.
They also have a very good coach in Jay Wright. They're a very tough team. They're playing with some NBA talent. The kid Pinkston, Javon Pinkston, certainly has a chance.
Yeah.
They have a very, very good underrated point guard, and who doesn't turn the ball over. They don't beat themselves. So I think Villanova is a team that we could see, much like Wisconsin, that could make a run to the Final Four. That's basically it. I saw Michigan last night. I don't think they have enough. We've talked. They also have a great coach. I think the two best X and O coaches in game are Beeline and Bo Ryan.
Okay.
I think the two of them and Pitino are probably the top three guys.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Michigan has enough this year. They've lost a lot of talent over the last couple of years with Trey Burke and Tim Hardaway and Glenn Robinson.
Yeah.
And so, and all three of those guys are in the league. So as good as Beeline is, they may be taking a step back.
Okay. Now, before I move to the NBA, I've got to ask this. Are you a Seahawks fan now as well because of Russell Wilson being there?
It's amazing what he's done. And, not to jump off topic too much, but it's amazing to me how close Wisconsin gets. They have, you think about it, the kid on the Texans, J.J. Watt, Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Now you got this kid Melvin Gordon, who's really one of the best college running backs I've ever seen.
Right.
But they always lose one game, either early or late, that keeps them out of the tier that's keeping them out of the playoff discussion. So
yeah.
They lost an early game to LSU. They were up 24-7. They ended up blowing that lead. If they only lose that game, they're in the discussion now if they beat Ohio State.
Yeah.
But because they also lost a game at Northwestern that they never should have lost, now they're out of the national championship discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, to answer your question, it's amazing what Wilson has done to come into the NFL, because he was really close in Wisconsin too. They were one loss away from a late loss to Ohio State to getting in the national championship picture.
Yeah.
So this guy is he's a winner. I remember watching his highlight tape from NC State when I heard he was transferring to Wisconsin, and I was blown away by it. I couldn't understand why NC State would let a kid like this go.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm pulling for. I'm not a huge Badger guy, but there's some sentiment there. So I always try to keep track and pull for guys where I can.
Yeah. And JJ Watt is just having a, dare I say it, Hall of Fame season. Or every minute that I see a highlight, it's like he knows the play that's being called. He's um, physically, he's just dominating people, and obviously to get to the right place at the right time mentally, he's just sharp. He's on it.
They're probably two legitimate MVP candidates. If Seattle can get on a run here and close out and get in the playoffs, and if Houston can get in the playoffs, which I think they're about 500, maybe a game or two over, then I think those two guys are legitimate NFL MVP candidates. Whether they win, you got Aaron Rodgers and
Yeah,
and Brady and Manning, so I doubt it, but I think they're going to get some votes.
agreed, agreed. Yeah, let's move back to NBA. But that was nice to talk about those guys. Uh, the Heat, the Miami Heat. Now, I've seen, I think, 3 or 4 games now. And when we spoke, I said how Dwayne Wade was looking like the old Dwayne Wade. And since then, watching Chris Bosh, he seems to be hot on his game. And then is it Cole and Chalmers, the 2 point guards? Those guys, it's like, wow, hold on. So without LeBron there, you guys are doing all this stuff that we didn't really get to see a lot of before when LeBron was there.
This week, today is Wednesday. Sunday, the Knicks had the Heat at the Garden, and the Heat won a kind of a slugfest game. It was the first home game after a West Coast trip for the Knicks. Not that that matters, but
Yeah.
that's always a tough spot. The Knicks are losing every game right now, but
Yeah,
the Heat beat them, I think, 86-79. Dwayne Wade was the best player on the floor. The issue with him is going to be his ability to be consistent with that.
yeah,
Bosh has been incredible. He's back to the guy we all saw in Toronto. It makes you feel like he definitely took a step back to kind of defer to LeBron. They still have some talented pieces around it, as you mentioned, some role players. But I think the key game was the next night where they went to Washington and Washington beat them. I think that's going to turn out to be the 4-5 in the Eastern Conference.
right.
Miami and Washington.
Yeah,
And Washington's tough. I mean, Washington, they have a backcourt right now with Wall and Beal and a young wing in Porter that's coming along. They have veteran NBA bigs with Nene and Gortat. I mean, they are a very difficult team, and they're coming.
Yeah.
And so I think you got Chicago, you got Cleveland, you got Toronto. I think they'll end up being probably the top three. Toronto has to get DeRozan back. That's important for them. And then I think that 4-5 is really going to come down to that Miami-Washington. And look, it could mix up. I mean, even Cleveland may not come as fast as we think they might, and
Yeah.
Cleveland could be in a 4-5 situation.
Yeah.
Toronto could fall. But as it sits right now, I would say that you're looking at Miami and Washington, and I think that game Monday night was a very good indication of what a playoff series will look like if those two end up matching up.
Right, right. And it's interesting that going back to the conversation previously, you talked about the Heat just having to fine tune the blueprint that they had to make that adjustment without LeBron. And then you look at the Cavaliers and you said the Cavaliers really need to figure out their blueprint, bringing these, Kevin Love and LeBron in to be able to work out, okay, who's doing what at what time. And I've seen a fair few games now, and I've seen exactly what you were talking about. And there were situations where guys were, it's like, well, hold on, you're not playing as a team. And people were just shooting for what it seemed for the sake of it. But then there's been other moments where you can see, right, they're rolling, and it's exactly what you said. There's the blueprint right there.
I made this point when we talked last week, and I'm going to drive it home again. I believe LeBron has to play in the post and be a point forward and a distributor from the post.
Yeah.
He can certainly play. We know he can get out in transition, but when things get to the half court set and they slow down, his floor is much more balanced when you have some scoring and you have the ability to play inside out.
Yeah.
And the Cavs don't do it, and we talked about the Knicks don't do it. And I think if both of those teams make that minor adjustment, I don't know if LeBron wants to do it. I've heard that Melo doesn't want to do it. Every time you see Carmelo get in the low post, this guy scores.
Yeah.
And he has a very high shooting percentage.
Yeah.
He's stronger than people think. I mean, he is an absolute bull on the post. He can finish at the rim in all kinds of different ways. His shooting percentage would go through the roof, and he can pass too. He's a willing passer, and that will create, for Cleveland, LeBron can distribute, and Love can play on the perimeter. Obviously, Irving can play on the perimeter. Dion Waiters, a lot of these guys. And for the Knicks, you get open looks for guys like Hardaway and Smith and Shumpert and Calderon by balancing the floor.
Yeah.
So when we talk about these guys finding themselves and finding their identity, it's easy to say, look, you got to guard, you got to play defense, you got to, that's 101. But offensively, I think this minor adjustment for both of these teams and both of these players could literally turn the Knicks season around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether they make the playoffs or not, I don't know. They've dug a deep hole for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I could see, Carmelo being able to share the ball from the post would make everybody better, and I think the same for Cleveland.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talking about Melo being able to pass the ball and make things happen. Kobe, I've been able to watch again a couple of games, and Kobe, as we said, he's there to silence his doubters, and I think he's doing that. But he's also sharing the ball. It's like he's realized, okay, this is a different team, different era. I've got to play differently, and it seems to be happening.
I agree with you, but they don't have enough. They just don't have enough. They also don't have any low post scoring. They have Boozer, but he's been around a long time.
Yeah.
So that I don't think that's going to be a consistent, dynamic, low post scorer. They also really don't have the ability to guard at the one, and you have so many quick point guards. I mean, look at what Phoenix has out there with Dragic and Bledsoe and guys like that.
Yeah.
And then you look at, a guy like Steph Curry and Golden State and, just across the board. If you can't score in the post and you can't protect the rim and you can't guard the one, you're going to have a lot of trouble in this NBA.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I know the Lakers won last night in Detroit. Detroit's still figuring things out. But I don't think the Lakers have enough. I think even if they make their playoffs, they're a 7-8 seed and they're a quick out to a San Antonio or a Dallas or somebody like that.
Yeah, yeah. And moving back to the East Coast and looking at teams there, and you have to mention Derrick Rose. And how do you think things are going to pan out for Derrick and the Bulls?
How do we know? I mean, who knows, right? I mean, the guy, I'd love to see him stay healthy and see what they can do. If he's healthy, they're the best team in the Eastern Conference, and they have a legitimate chance to win a championship.
Yeah.
But there's so many, issues that he's had and that he continues to have that, who can predict where they're going to be, and he's such an important piece of what they're trying to do. So I think if he's healthy, they'll come out of the East.
Yeah.
If he's not, and Cleveland gets their act together and figures this thing out and gets on a roll after the All-Star break, they certainly have the talent to do it, but that all remains to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. BJ, always great to speak with you. And I look forward to catching up with you again very soon.
Anthony, it's a pleasure. I always appreciate and enjoy coming on with you. So anytime.